Rousseau said that man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains. Consider the evident impossibility of creating and organizing a unified movement to topple the existing world order. Yet there are those who have faith in their ability to create and organize a new world order to replace the old. How could those incapable of organizing and managing a global revolution ever be capable of organizing and managing a global government? A revolutionary movement, which degenerates into factions, could only succeed in establishing a political system which would do the same. This does not imply that the current system should not be opposed and dismantled. It should. Many will ask what it should be replaced with. But why should it be replaced with anything at all? Will a man whose chains have been removed ask what should replace them? Will a man whose cancer has been removed ask what should replace it? Liberation from slavery and disease is a sufficient aim. No state power enforces the laws of mathematics, chemistry, or thermodynamics. The universe provides endless examples of natural systems which display organization, yet no authority or coercion. Yes, I'm questioning the presumption that state power, force, and coercion are necessary, and suggesting that natural organization will emerge through the voluntary interactions of individuals in the absence of artificial systems of control. This may sound like an extraordinary thesis to many. In my video on libertarianism and socialism, I made the case that a voluntary society, rather than an authoritarian state, offers the better path toward the realization of the legitimate aims of socialism. And when attempting to reconcile seemingly conflicting political ideals, the importance of capitalization needs to be recognized. Libertarianism, with a capital L, socialism, with a capital S, or meritocracy, with a capital M, are more than sets of political ideals. They are political ideologies. And I should say that they are less rather than more, because ideals transcend ideology. When we imprison these formless ideals within the forms of ideologies, we restrict their freedom to operate. These spiritual powers, held captive in carnal bodies, are made slaves to worldly powers. And they are divided against one another, lest these divided waters come together and drown Pharaoh and his chariots. Let the captives be set free. Whether I speak of libertarianism, socialism, nationalism, meritocracy, or any other set of ideals, please understand that I'm only interested in ideals and not the ideologies that embody them. As for the ideologies, I wish for their complete annihilation. I am in no sense affiliated with any political party or ideology. I affiliate myself only with the principles of truth, liberty, and reason. Many of my viewers will be familiar with the Meritocracy Party website and their stated political platform. I advocate meritocracy with a lowercase m. But my support of the principle of meritocracy should not be taken as an endorsement of meritocracy with a capital M. And my opposition to the principle of authority should not be taken as an attack on any who affiliate themselves with the Meritocracy Party. I'm only attacking statism. I hope to convince those who are idealist rather than ideologues that a voluntary society offers a superior path toward the realization of the legitimate aims of meritocracy compared to an authoritarian state. I should start by defining the state. By the state, I mean a power which claims a monopoly on the use of force within a geographic region. A state is authoritarian. A voluntary society is anti-authoritarian, or libertarian. In Gnostic mythological language, the state can be identified with the demiurge principle, and the voluntary society can be associated with the Lucifer principle. The United States was explicitly founded on the Lucifer principle of liberty. But as the size and power of the federal government has increased, and as the Constitution has been reinterpreted and subverted, the demiurge has gained a significant degree of control. One of the primary means has been through the creation of an unconstitutional central bank in the form of the Federal Reserve. In many ways, the Federal Reserve is the heart of the beast. But there's something here that many people miss. The Federal Reserve was created by the government. When the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law, the state created the Federal Reserve. Central banks are not the creation of a free market. Central banks are the creation of a state power. Those who fail to understand the problem are not in a very good position to outline an effective solution. Those who mistakenly blame the free market tends to propose a more powerful state as a solution. Only when you correctly identify the state as the problem can you see that the free market is the solution. Many criticize capitalism by claiming that the system is rigged. Ironically, what they're saying is that the free market isn't free. Then obviously, the rigged system they're talking about isn't a free market. So why isn't it free? Who is rigging it? The state. So their insane solution to the rigged system is to give more power to the state, which is rigging the system. The rational solution is obviously to abolish the state. The monopoly on force is the central monopoly from which all other monopolies emanate. The state, which holds a monopoly on force, creates a central bank, which holds a monopoly on money creation. The state also creates corporations. A corporation is a legal entity. The corporation, like the central bank, is the creation of the state, not a creation of the free market. So the state is like the demiurge, who creates the other archons. Of course, in practice, there is collusion between the governments, banks, and corporations. It isn't as simple as saying that the government controls the banks and corporations. The banks and corporations exert control over the government and politicians through financial and economic pressure. Ultimately, it is the international bankers who are running the show. But their power rests in the state. Without the state and its monopoly on the use of force and its ability to pass and enforce laws and regulations with the use of force, the so-called global power elite have no power. And without power, they're really not so elite. They're just powerless little crybabies who can do nothing more than throw little temper tantrums when they don't get their way. Without the power of the state, the world can simply ignore them until they cry themselves to sleep. There are two kinds of authority. There is an authority that's based on power and an authority that's based on merit. The authority of the state is based on power and the use of force, or the threat of the use of force. If you disobey its laws, it will use violence against you. This is the Abrahamic God who gives laws and punishes those who disobey them. But what is the justification for this authority? I've dealt with the religious question in other videos. I'm dealing mainly with the political here. What right does the state have to tell me or you what to do? What right does it have to use violence against us if we choose not to obey its laws? Most political arguments center around the question of who should rule over humanity, or how humanity should be ruled, but almost never around the question of whether humanity should be ruled over at all. Every law is a restriction on human freedom. The only justification for restricting human freedom is to protect human freedom. This is to say that free people are free to defend themselves against those who attempt to take away their freedom. The right of self-defense is not in conflict with the non-aggression principle. Free people are free to defend their own person and property against violence, theft, and vandalism. Many people justify the existence of the state in order to protect individuals against violent crime and property crime. This is where most libertarians differ from anarchists. Both agree that state power is evil, but libertarians reluctantly accept it as a necessary evil. But even if we're forced to accept this evil as necessary, we should have no more of this evil than is necessary, and we should strive intellectually to discover ways of making this evil unnecessary. We should strive to find rational solutions to social and economic problems that are based on liberty, voluntary association, nonviolence, and non-coercion, rather than on state violence. And this is where I part ways with the Meritocracy Party. Their solutions are entirely statist and authoritarian. According to the website meritocracyparty.org, the mission of the Meritocracy Party is to transform the world into a place that delivers equal opportunity for every child to thrive and develop to the greatest extent of their individual talent and ambition. And I think that's something that virtually everyone would support. It's possible, though, to agree on a mission statement, but disagree over how best to accomplish that mission. And I'm likely to be attacked by ideologues for criticizing their strategy. But I believe my criticisms will find support among idealists who truly believe in the mission. In The Lord of the Rings, there were those who wanted to seize the Ring of Power in order to defeat Sauron. Gandalf, in his wisdom, saw that this was futile. The ring answers to one master. The Ring of Power must be destroyed. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, says the inscription on the Ring of Power. To wear the Ring of Power is to become a slave to Sauron. Even if the ring is put on with the intention to defeat Sauron, the ring will turn the wearer into Sauron's slave. This is to say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power will never end corruption. To end corruption, end power. A globalist government will never bring about the liberation of mankind. It can only bring about their absolute bondage in darkness. State power must be abolished. Authority must be opposed. This radical statement may terrify some. Humanity has been brainwashed into believing that without the power of the state, the world would descend into a hellish condition of absolute anarchy. This is similar to the way in which humanity has been brainwashed into believing that without the power of organized religion, the world would descend into immorality. But the opposite is the case. Look around you. Wars are waged by state powers. Often these wars are secretly funded and fomented by the central banks, which are, as I've mentioned, the creations of state power. Wars are started in order to enrich the international bankers and corporate elites. As I've said, without the state, not only would these central banks and corporations have no power, they wouldn't even exist. Not only their power, but even their very existence arises from the existence of the state. To kill the vampire, you have to stab it in the heart. The heart of the vampire is the state. Ironically, there are many who think that doing away with the state would give the central banks and megacorporations absolute power. The opposite is the case. It would leave them absolutely powerless. It would cause them to burst into flames and vanish in a cloud of smoke like a vampire at sunrise. Let the darkness of state power be lifted from the world of men. Let the sun rise and shine upon the nations with its light of liberty and reason. Let there be light. Many suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. They've been slaves their entire lives, and they can't even imagine being free. They've come to accept the party slogans of Big Brother. They robotically repeat the slogan, "Freedom is slavery." Sartre said that man is condemned to be free. And mankind believes that freedom is a kind of prison that nature has condemned humanity to, and that state authority has liberated mankind from. Wake up. Your prison doors aren't even locked. The only thing that keeps you imprisoned is your fear of freedom. Imagine that a group of people are inside a burning house. Flames are climbing up the walls. It's only a matter of minutes before the whole room becomes completely engulfed in smoke and flame. Should they stay inside the burning house because they haven't yet built another house to run to? Suppose that it's cold and raining outside. Is that an argument in favor of staying in the burning house, dying of smoke inhalation, and burning to ashes? Surely no one would be so absurd. Yet this is exactly the sort of absurdity I encounter from people who argue against abolishing the state. They would rather submit to the authority of the state than accept the challenges and responsibilities of liberty. I don't have any utopian vision to sell. There will inevitably be problems in a voluntary society. It may be cold and raining outside, but the alternative is the burning house. The alternative is the authoritarian state and the central banks and international corporations that have grown out of it and depend on it. Power corrupts. You can't fight corruption with power. You can't fight fire with fire. Will you stay inside the burning house, or will you run outside? Some may still object. Some may ask, what will prevent new authoritarian structures from forming once we've torn down those that exist presently? This is almost like asking, what will prevent our next house from catching on fire? This is like a sick man asking what will prevent him from getting some new disease once the disease he currently suffers from is cured. Yes, it's very likely that after you have the cancer removed, you'll eventually come down with the flu. Let's just remove the cancer for now. That's the immediate problem. Once the cancer is gone and you catch the flu, then you can go to the pharmacy and pick up some medicine to deal with that. There will be future threats to freedom. This isn't an argument in favor of accepting the present enslavement of humanity. First, rebel against those who rule over you now, and then resist those who would rule over you in the future. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time, with the blood of patriots and tyrants, as the saying goes. But as the Apostle Paul says, our struggle isn't against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. The struggle is against the principle of authority and state power, the principle and power of the demiurge. The battle is for the minds of men. The power of the state is given to it by the people. The power of the government is granted to it by the consent of the governed. Without this consent, no power is granted. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, Pilate tried to intimidate Jesus. He said, "Don't you know that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You have no power over me, except what's been given to you from above." So what's above Pilate? Caesar, of course. But where does Caesar get his power? Like other kings, he says he has a divine right to rule. His power is given to him from above, from God. And a Gnostic may see this God as the demiurge, the God of this world, rather than the true God. But even he has no power over man except that which is given to him from above. And the God of light, above this world of darkness, lives within the soul of every man. The power to enslave mankind is granted to the Demiurge and his archons by mankind. Mankind is enslaved only by his own consent. This is part of the symbolic meaning of the Devil card in the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. The chains around the necks of the man and woman are loose and could easily be removed if they willed to remove them. The grapes symbolize wine and therefore drunkenness. This drunkenness is a metaphor for man's ignorance of his true self and his divine nature. The flame symbolizes the desire which is born of this ignorance and the lust for power and worldly pleasure. The spiritual liberation of mankind is to be found in gnosis, and that's the subject for another discussion. On the earthly level, man's liberation is to be found in the recognition of the sovereignty of the individual and the illegitimacy of state power and artificial systems of control. Man must delegitimize them by withdrawing his consent. To remain free, he must refuse to give his consent to any new system of control. He must resist authority. I mentioned earlier that there was another kind of authority, and it's important not to confuse the two. They have nothing at all in common, and it's unfortunate that we use the same word to speak of both. I would prefer to call legitimate authority merit. If an individual is recognized as an authority on a subject, this doesn't mean that he has power to make laws that other people must obey, or to use the threat of force to coerce other people to obey him, or to use violence against those who disobey. Think of it this way. In an authoritarian society, the government might pass laws telling people what they're allowed to eat and what they're not allowed to eat. People are forced to follow these laws under the threat of violence. If they eat a piece of forbidden fruit, for example, they might be sent to prison or even executed. In a voluntary society, on the other hand, there would still be people who are authorities on the subject of nutrition. If people want to be healthy, they can choose to follow the advice of these experts. And if experts disagree, everyone is free to decide for themselves which expert to follow. After all, it's their body. There are natural consequences for your dietary decisions, and these natural consequences, not the artificial consequences imposed by governments, are the basis of natural law. As I said in the beginning, I advocate a voluntary society in which human behavior is governed by natural laws rather than by artificial laws dictated by artificial systems of control. In a free market, wherever a need exists, an opportunity exists for those who are most qualified to meet that need. It's a matter of supply and demand. And I'm not going to try to give an economics lesson here. There are others far more qualified than me to do so. And in a voluntary society, you're free to seek out the most qualified economics teachers to learn from. But once you learn even a little bit about economics, it will be painfully obvious to you that these people who rant about the so-called evils of capitalism and who think the government is the solution have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. I've already dealt with the issue of taxation in another video entitled On Libertarianism and Socialism, and I don't want to repeat that entire video here. Taxation is theft. We either have property rights or we don't. I own myself. No one else owns me. I own my labor and the fruits of my labor. If I use my labor to build a cabin in the woods, that cabin is mine, and no one else has a right to take it from me. If I plant a garden, that garden belongs to me, and no one else has a right to steal from it. I know someone who hasn't seen all of my videos may ask why stealing is wrong if there's no government to pass laws against stealing. I've addressed this in other videos, such as the moral argument for God. State power and authority is not the basis of morality or of individual rights. As I've already stated, the state derives its power and authority from the people, from individuals. So even if rights were given to individuals by the state, power is given to the state by individuals. So ultimately, the rights of individuals rest within the individuals themselves. So there's no need to waste any more time on that argument. You have property rights. It's wrong for me to destroy or take your property against your will. It's wrong for me and a group of people to steal property from you. And if I and a group of people vote on it and decide amongst ourselves in a democratic manner to steal from you, it's still stealing. If we vote amongst ourselves to hire men with guns to steal from you, it's still stealing. Even if we allow you to cast a vote too on whether or not we send men with guns to steal from you, it's still stealing. Even if we plan to give some of the money we stole to charity, it's still stealing. And if it's wrong for you to steal, and it's wrong for me to steal, it's wrong for the government to steal. If it's wrong for you to kill, and it's wrong for me to kill, it's wrong for the government to kill. And if you don't believe that moral laws apply to the state as well as to the individual, then on what grounds do you oppose the current power system? If you don't believe that the state you wish to create must obey moral laws, then why must the present state? You either believe in moral law or you don't. And if you're a relativist, then what is your basis for accusing the present rulers of mankind of acting immorally? You're a hypocrite. A 100% death tax is a statist solution proposed by some as a way of ending dynastic wealth and creating equal opportunities for all, regardless of who their parents were. Well, grave robbery is still robbery. If you own something, that means it's yours. You can sell it if you want. You can give it away if you want. And you're free to sell it or give it away to anyone you choose. And ownership is transferred to them. So if you want to transfer ownership of your property to your spouse, your children, or some charity after you die, you have every right to do that. It's yours to do with as you wish. But even if you don't care about morality, and you want to have a 100% inheritance tax, even though you know it violates individual rights, the fact is that it just won't work. For one thing, the millionaires would just move to a country that didn't have a millionaire's death tax. So you would have to have a one-world government that no one could escape from. And even if you had that, all they would have to do is use their money to buy property, and then sell all of that property to their children for $1. That's one very easy way to get around the death tax. I promise you they will find other ways around it too. And they should. Taxation is theft. Why shouldn't you find ways to prevent thieves from stealing from you? And in case anyone's wondering, my parents are not wealthy, and I will probably have absolutely no inheritance whatsoever. I'm not a member of the wealthy class. And I do want people who are born into poor, working-class families, like I was, to have opportunities to succeed, and to be able to go as far as their own effort and abilities allow them to go. So the question is, how do we do this without violating moral laws, or giving some state power the authority to violate the rights of individuals? I'm going to offer my thoughts on this problem, and others are free to offer their own. And whichever solutions offer the best results are the ones we'll keep using. Whichever solutions prove ineffective, we'll simply abandon in favor of the more effective solutions. That's how things work in a voluntary and meritocratic society. As long as it doesn't involve force and coercion, I'm all in favor of it. First of all, I should say that I don't necessarily believe in equal opportunity. I like the idea, but I don't think it's possible. Even if it were possible to achieve equal opportunity in an economic sense, there's more to life than money. There are all different kinds of ways that one person might be born with certain advantages over someone else. Genetics plays a big role. Some people will have higher IQs than others. Some will be taller. Some will be more athletic. Some will be more physically attractive. In his book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell even points out that the month a kid was born in gives them an advantage over other children who were born in different months when it comes to becoming hockey players. I won't explain it here, but I recommend the book. So are we going to make sure that all children are born in the same month? Again, I'm not saying that I'm against equal opportunity. I'm only saying that it's absolutely impossible to provide everyone with equal opportunities and to make life perfectly fair. What I think we should focus on instead of equal opportunity is sufficient opportunity. As long as you have sufficient opportunity to develop your natural talents and abilities and to pursue your chosen path in life and to reach your maximum potential as an individual, why should you envy someone else or resent someone else if they had rich parents? And it's the state that creates virtually all of the unfair inequality anyway. If you end the state, the inequality it creates will go away too. There will be some residual inequality, but that will lessen significantly over time. When we talk about dynastic wealth, we're basically talking about royal bloodlines and the banking families. The wealth of the royal families has all come through taxation. End taxation. They're going to spend the wealth that they already have, so that's going to flow back into the economy. And if they want to keep money coming in, they're going to have to engage in some kind of productive labor, since they're not able to tax people anymore. The wealth of the banking families largely comes from the state, too. The state borrows money from the banks to spend on wars and other things, and then the state taxes the people to pay back the banks. So the wealth of the banking families ultimately comes from taxation as well. End taxation, and you cut off the supply of stolen money to these elite royal and banking families. The wealth they have will flow back into the economy, and wealth inequality will move toward more of a natural equilibrium. Of course, there will still be some inequality, because some people will earn more than others. But I have no problem with earned wealth. I only have a problem with stolen wealth. The vast majority of stolen wealth is the result of state power and taxation. In the case of a central bank like the Federal Reserve, which is given a monopoly on money creation by the state, it also has the power to print money and inflate the currency. And inflation is, in effect, a hidden tax on the poor and working class. If you do a little research into the Federal Reserve, you can learn more about that and how that works. But of course, without the creation of a central bank by the state, you wouldn't have that either. So hopefully you can see that the state and taxation is how all of this wealth came to be acquired by these royal and banking families. The state and taxation are the problems, not the solutions. The solution is abolishing the state, or at least dramatically reducing its size and power to no more than is necessary to protect individual rights of citizens and to secure a nation's border. If the state exists at all, its ability to tax its citizens should be eliminated, or at least be extremely limited. Some may argue that there is a case to be made for at least some government and at least some taxation. I say that the burden of proof is on them. And if it is the case that the evils of government and government theft through taxation are necessary, again, we should be willing to tolerate no more of these evils than is absolutely necessary, and we should work tirelessly to find ways of making these evils completely unnecessary. So I especially have a problem with those who present state power and taxation as if they were the ultimate solution, instead of as if they were a necessary but highly undesirable and hopefully only temporary compromise with an enemy who we find ourselves not yet capable of vanquishing permanently, but who we resolve to find a way to vanquish as soon as we're able to do so, because we understand that our dependency on the enemy is the very thing that gives him power over us. So how might a voluntary society offer its members sufficient opportunity without resorting to theft or empowering the enemy? I think that many churches offer an excellent example. Very often, I've visited churches and observed them taking up offerings to meet the needs of a family or congregation member. No one is forced to give, but members of the church community willingly give to help out other members of their church community. I don't believe a church is the only kind of community organization possible. I believe this is human nature, and I believe it would express itself much more in the absence of artificial systems of control based on coercion and violence. Without a welfare state, individuals will have to rely on each other and form communities to offer each other mutual support. I don't believe there is anything that an authoritarian state can do better than a community of individuals can through voluntary association. Of course, individuals will tend to be the most charitable with members of their own small communities. I don't believe that you could have the same level of fraternal bonds at the global level, especially in a globalist state that destroys any sense of national identity, racial identity, family identity, and even individual identity. I suggest watching my video on globalism and nationalism and considering how it fits in with what I'm saying here. Families help out members of their own family, and this is a good thing, as long as there's no state that allows certain royal and banking families to steal from other families through the use of state force. Communities help out families within their community. Nations help out communities within their nation. Look at how little the government did for the people of New Orleans after Katrina hit, compared to how much private individuals did through private charities all around the country. Nations can help out other nations around the globe. It's a question of voluntary charity versus armed robbery. Not only is armed robbery immoral, but it's ineffective. A voluntary society is more effective at meeting the needs of individuals. It's the more meritorious system. Will you support an immoral, irrational, and ineffective system built on force and coercion? Or will you support a moral, rational, and meritorious system built on liberty and voluntary association? The choice is yours. There is no utopian society. The real world has its problems. But I believe a voluntary society can address those problems more effectively than an authoritarian state can. The responsibilities of adulthood are much greater than the responsibilities of childhood. But do you want to remain a child forever? The state does want you to remain a child forever, so that it can take on the authority of the parent. The state wants you to be convinced that you are dependent on its power, and that freedom is slavery and ignorance is strength. I want to convince you that freedom is strength and ignorance is slavery. Liberty doesn't mean a life free from hardship. But the state doesn't offer a life free from hardship either. So you might as well at least be free. I would prefer the help and support of a close-knit community over helpless dependency on a federal bureaucracy. If I need help, I would rather ask for help from the community that I've contributed to and been a member of than apply for government money which I know has been stolen from other people through state force. And I know that some people will object and say, well, that's great if you have a community that supports you, but what about those who don't? To answer that, I would ask, why don't you have a community that supports you? And I ask that question within the context of a voluntary society. If you are an intelligent and talented individual who has something to offer to a community, would you not be able to find a community that would love to have you as a part of their community? If you have the willingness and ability to meet a need within that community, you are a valuable member of that community. If you need help, they will be willing to help you, out of selfish reasons if nothing else, because you're an important part of the community and they need you. And I'm not arguing for the virtue of selfishness here. I believe they will also help you out of altruism. They will help you out because they know you would do the same for them if the situation were reversed. This is human nature. The state attempts to destroy human nature and reduce us to cogs in a machine. The aim of the state is the abolition of man. Abolish the state. Know your true nature. Trust in the human spirit. The truth is, the only people who would be shunned by communities are those individuals who lack talent and ability, those who lack intelligence, those who are unable and unwilling to contribute to the good of the community, those who want only to live by exploiting others, those who are parasites, those same individuals who presently exploit others through the power of the state, the royal bloodlines and banking families, the crooked politicians. Frankly, who gives a shit about them? Such people will cease to exist in a voluntary and meritocratic society. In a free society, individuals are free to refuse to support these parasites. A free and voluntary society is a truly meritocratic society. State power is the root of all nepotism, cronyism, and corruption. Abolish the state. The only true meritocracy is anarchy.